The hospital lights flickered softly against the sterile walls as Ethan gripped the edge of bed, his knuckles white, his heart breaking. "Mr. Cole," the doctor said, voice trembling, "you can't marry her. She's dying." Ethan looked up, tears burning behind his eyes, and whispered, "I know." It all started in a quiet little town called Willow Creek, the kind of place where the mornings smelled like coffee and the evenings were stitched together by the sound of cicadas. Ethan Cole was a carpenter, known for his honest smile and callous hands that could turn raw wood into something beautiful. He wasn't rich, but he was content. His workshop sat right behind his late father's old barn, and every morning he'd wipe the sawdust off his boots, pour himself a cup of black coffee, and lose himself in his craft. Then came Lila Summers, the new schoolteacher in town. She had that soft, almost musical laugh, and eyes that seemed to carry the color of the morning sky right after it rained. The first time Ethan saw her, she was sitting on the porch of Miller's Cafe, sketching something in her notebook while sipping lemonade. He didn't know what was about her, maybe the stillness in her posture or the sadness she tried to hide behind her smile, but something inside him stirred. "Mind if I sit here?" he'd asked that day, pointing to the empty chair across from her. She looked up, smiled faintly, and said, "Only if you don't mind the silence." It was a kind of silence that said everything words couldn't. Weeks passed, and Ethan found himself waiting for the moments he'd accidentally run into Lila, at the farmer's market, at the library, at the church steps after Sunday service. They started walking together in the evenings, along the river trail that curved behind the old mill. She told him stories about her students, about the little girl who tried to draw the moon with a yellow crayon, about the boy who asked her if teachers ever got lonely. Ethan never told her how those stories made him ache, because he saw the loneliness in her too. One night, as the fireflies danced around them, Lila said quietly, "You ever think some people just don't get forever?" Ethan looked at her, puzzled. "What do you mean?" She smiled, eyes glistening in the faint light. "Some people are meant to remind others how beautiful love can be, not how long it lasts." He didn't know then how much that line would haunt him later. Scene 3. The first sign something was wrong. It was early autumn when Lila fainted for the first time. They were picking apples on the Henderson farm, laughing about who could fill their basket faster, when she suddenly went still, her hand slipping, the apples rolling down the hill. Ethan caught her before she hit the ground, his voice breaking. "Lila, hey, look at me." At the hospital, the doctor said it was probably exhaustion. "She's been working too hard," he explained. "Nothing to worry about." But Ethan noticed things. The way she sometimes pressed her hand to her chest, the way her smile grew weaker, the way she'd hide the pills in her purse when she thought he wasn't looking. He didn't push her. He didn't want to scare her away. But one night, under the soft hum of crickets, he finally asked, "Lila, what's going on with you?" She looked down, then met his eyes. "Promise you won't run?" "I couldn't even if I tried." She took a deep breath. "It's my heart, Ethan. It's failing. They said I've got maybe a year, if I'm lucky." The world tilted. The night suddenly felt heavier. He wanted to say something, anything, but all he could do was pull her close. And in that silence, she whispered, "Please don't look at me like I'm dying. I just want to live while I still can." Scene 4. Choosing to stay. Some men would have walked away, not out of cruelty, but out of fear. Ethan didn't. The next morning, he showed up at her house with flowers and said, "I'm not leaving, so you better get used to me being around." Lila laughed, half crying. "You're insane." He smiled softly. "Maybe, but I'm your kind of insane." From that day forward, every moment became precious. They drove to the coast and watched the sunrise over the water. They painted the old barn she loved so much in shades of blue and white. They danced barefoot on the porch in the middle of a summer storm. And every night, before falling asleep, Ethan whispered the same words into her hair. "We still have time." But time, as it always does, started running faster. By winter, Lila's strength had faded. She couldn't walk without gasping for air. Ethan carried her when she needed it, built her a swing on the porch, and spent hours reading her favorite books aloud, even when she fell asleep halfway through. Then came the day that changed everything. Lila had collapsed again, this time She didn't wake up right away. Ethan's hand shook as he drove her to the hospital, his heart pounding against his ribs like it was trying to break free. The doctor, a kind, tired man named Dr. Howard, came out of the room, his face grim. "Mr. Cole," he said quietly, "we've done everything we can. She's in end-stage heart failure. I'm sorry." Ethan's throat tightened. "How long?" "Days. Maybe weeks if she rests." Ethan turned to the window, watching the snowfall outside. She always wanted to see it snow in spring. Dr. Howard hesitated before speaking again. "There's something else. She told me you were planning to marry her. I can't allow that. Son, she's not strong enough. You can't marry her. She's dying." Ethan looked at him, tears streaming freely now. "I know." Then, softer, "That's why I have to." Scene 6. The wedding that shouldn't have happened. 2 days later, the hospital chapel was filled with a handful of people. A nurse, 2 of Lila's students, and Pastor Graham. The snow had begun to fall outside, blanketing the town in quiet white. Lila lay in her hospital bed, surrounded by flowers Ethan had picked himself. She was pale, fragile, but her eyes shone brighter than ever. Ethan knelt beside her, holding her trembling hand. "You don't have to do this," she whispered. He smiled, voice steady. "You said you didn't want to die without living. Well, this is living." He wore his father's old suit, the one that smelled faintly of cedar and rain. She wore a simple white dress, her hair braided with tiny wildflowers. As the pastor began to speak, the world seemed to fade away. It was just them, 2 souls bound not by time, but by love that didn't care about the clock. "Do you, Ethan Cole, take this woman?" "I do." "Do you, Lila Summers?" "I do," she whispered, her voice barely audible. When he kissed her, it wasn't out of pity or desperation. It was a promise that even if she slipped away, she'd never be gone. 3 days after the wedding, the sun rose soft and golden over Willow Creek. Lila's room smelled of lavender and sunlight. Ethan sat beside her, tracing circles on her palm. "Ethan," she murmured, barely opening her eyes. "Thank you." "For what?" "For not being afraid to love me anyway." He pressed his forehead to hers, voice cracking. "How could I not?" She smiled faintly. "Do you think heaven looks like this morning?" "I think heaven looks like you," he whispered. Her breathing slowed. The room grew still. And then, like a sigh, she was gone. Ethan didn't cry, not at first. He just sat there, holding her hand, until the sunlight turned to dusk. Willow Creek moved on, as small towns always do. The school renamed its library after Lila Summers, the teacher who taught hearts as much as minds. Ethan still lived in the same old house. He still worked with his hands, but now, in the corner of his workshop, stood a wooden bench carved with her favorite words. Some people are meant to remind others how beautiful love can be, not how long it lasts. Every Sunday, he'd drive to the river trail where they used to walk, sit on the old bench, and read aloud from the same book he'd read to her that last winter. People in town said they'd sometimes see him smiling there, like he was talking to someone only he could see. Some loves aren't measured in years, but in the moments brave enough to exist.